Israel has carried out new airstrikes on the Lebanese capital, Beirut, killing at least 6 people. One airstrike hit an apartment building near the city center. Israel's army says it is targeting the militant group Hezbollah. It has issued evacuation orders for multiple areas, including towns along the southern border where IDF ground troops are battling Hezbollah fighters. Lebanon's health ministry says more than 1,000 people have been killed in Israeli strikes during the past 2 weeks. We can now turn to journalist Stella Männer, who joins us from Beirut. Stella, what more can you tell us about the new strikes on Beirut?
The Israeli army has carried out airstrikes in an area called Bashura. Bashura is in the heart of the city center. It is an area that is known that is a middle-class area where middle-class families live. It is approximately only 1 kilometer far away from where the caretaker prime minister lives. And it is reported that 6 people have been killed during the strikes and 8 have been wounded. This is just the second strike that is right into the city center of Beirut after striking Kola earlier this week. This means that people here are getting more scared and scared as Israel hits closer and closer to the city center. And it's not only about hitting the southern suburbs anymore.
What are you hearing about clashes between Hezbollah and Israeli troops in the south of the country?
We hear that there is heavy fighting going on the ground between Hezbollah and Israel. The Israeli army has now confirmed that at least 8 of its soldiers have died. It is a little bit what we have expected, because while the Israeli army has the upper hand when it comes to aerial strikes, Hezbollah is known to be quite strong during ground combats. And we heard that the organization has done a couple of ambushes.
That's journalist Stella Männer in Beirut. Thank you so much for your reporting. That was our Beirut bureau chief, Mohammed Shreite. Meanwhile, Israel mulls its response to Iran's largest ever missile strike on its territory. U.S. President Joe Biden says he would not support an attack on Iran's nuclear program. According to the Israeli army, some of its air bases were hit in Tuesday's attack, but no major damage was caused. Israel's allies do agree it has the right to respond, but all are calling for restraint.
Israel's leaders discuss how to strike back at Iran in response to Tehran's biggest ever missile assault. In the markets of Jerusalem, it's business as usual. But the conflict and how Israel may strike back is on everyone's mind.
I think that nobody wants war, not us, not anybody. But we don't have choice.
We have a very strong army. We believe in Hashem, that He's with us, that this is our country. We're meant to be here. We belong here, and no one's ever going to take that from us.
I trust the IDF. I trust the Israeli government that will do everything good for us. And I'm really not afraid of our enemy. This is the only option we have.
Onlookers captured video footage of Israel's defense systems destroying many, but not all, of the 180 missiles launched by Iran. Navy ships from Israel's biggest ally, the US, also helped deflect the attack. US President Joe Biden said he and other leaders of the G7 nations were discussing more sanctions on Iran, but he made clear that backing for Israel's next step has limits.
Can I ask you, what is your... Would you support an attack on Iran nuclear sites by Israel? That. The answer is no. I think there's things we'll be discussing with the Israelis what they're going to do, but all 7 of us agree that they have a right to respond, but they should respond in proportion.
Iran's president insists his country does not want to go to war with Israel. He says Tuesday's missile attack was itself a payback for Israel's killing of the leader of Hezbollah, the militant group supported by Iran.
We were left with no choice but to respond. If Israel decides to retaliate, then it will face harsher reactions.
In the occupied West Bank, a funeral has been held for the only person killed in Iran's missile assault. A Palestinian man hit by parts of a rocket that fell from the sky in the city of Jericho.
And for more, we can now speak to DW correspondent Emily Gordine, who joins us from Jerusalem. Emily, good to see you. What more do we know about how Israel is planning to respond to Iran's recent attacks?
Well, just after the attack, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu came out saying that Iran had made a very big mistake. Now, the war cabinet right now is still weighing its options. Danny Danon, Israel's ambassador to the UN, has said that, quote, our response will be decisive and yes, it will be painful. Now, we're hearing from Israeli officials that a response could include strikes on strategic infrastructure in Iran, so oil and gas rigs, but also assassinations and attacks on Iran's air defense systems. But crucially, it could also include attacks on Iran's nuclear sites. But at the same time, we're also hearing that this response will be coordinated with the US, and the US, while supporting a response and saying that Israel has the right to defend itself, has also said that it does not support strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. And I think that very much reflects the desire in the US to avoid an all-out war between the two sides, especially ahead of crucial elections in the US. But as we've seen in the past, the calls made by the US have not always been listened to in Israel, and so we will have to wait and see what will happen next.
We heard it earlier from Stella in Beirut. There have been more strikes and ground combat between Hezbollah and Israeli troops in southern Lebanon as well. What are you hearing from the Israeli side?
Well, similarly, we're hearing that there's been heavy fighting on the ground between Hezbollah fighters and Israeli soldiers. At the same time, Israeli artillery has kept pounding Hezbollah sites in southern Lebanon. We've also heard about a strike in Beirut that is said to have killed 6 people and wounded many more. We also know that more regular military and armored units have joined the ground invasion in the south of Lebanon. At the same time, 8 IDF soldiers have already been killed in the fighting, and we also continue to see air sirens and rocket alerts going off in the north of Israel. So there's no stopping inside of the fighting. But military analysts in Israel have also been warning that this conflict, this fight on the ground with Hezbollah will not be easy. That being said, Israel has made it its war goal to return its residents in the north of Israel, and many only see the use of force currently as the only viable option of making that possible.
Meanwhile, the war in Gaza continues. What's the latest there?
That's right. A new operation is said to have opened up in Khan Yunis in the south of Gaza. A strike is said to have killed over 50 people and wounding dozens more. Now that is basically taking the death toll to over 41,000 in Gaza since the start of the war that's been going on for a year now. Any ceasefire talks and hostage release deals have gone without much progress over the last year, and that's essentially also a reflection of how the focus in Israel has shifted from the south to the northern border, to the border with Lebanon. And talking to analysts in Israel, there's this assumption that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is not prepared to pay the cost for a ceasefire and a hostage deal. And that means that these hostages are essentially turning into a liability for Hamas in the sense that it allows Israel to continue its offenses in Gaza. And so right now, as it seems, this conflict is also not, and its end is also nowhere in sight.
This is DW correspondent Emily Gordine in Jerusalem. Thanks.